Welcome to the Hayden Cooper MMA channel. Today we're breaking down UFC 321, top to bottom. I've done the full tape study, stat research, and stylistic breakdown so you don't have to. We'll go through each key matchup, what the film actually shows about these fighters, and finish with my predictions for who gets their hand raised on fight night. Before we go into it, I would like to warn you that some of the fighters' names will be mispronounced, because this AI voice is very ignorant. Okay, let's go. Jacqueline Amorim enters this fight as one of the most dangerous submission specialists in the entire strawweight division. At 30 years old, standing 5'3" with a 68-inch reach, she's built like a compact powerhouse, explosive, composed, and lethal on the mat. Trained at American Top Team under world-class coaches like Alciner Alves and Jacare Souza, Amorim brings an elite BJJ background to the cage. 10 wins, 8 of them by submission, and the other 2 by knockout. That's a 100% finishing rate, something you almost never see at 115 pounds. Her only career loss came by decision, which speaks volumes about her durability and control under pressure. She averages over 2 takedowns per 15 minutes, and when she gets the fight to the mat, her transitions are lightning fast. She's submitting black belts and making it look routine. Now across from her is Mizuki Inao, a 31-year-old Japanese veteran with 21 pro fights and a strong technical foundation in karate and shoot boxing. Inao is the far more experienced striker here, landing around 4.6 significant strikes per minute, compared to Amorim's 2.7. She throws volume, keeps a steady pace, and rarely slows down, even late into fights. Her defense, however, can be an issue. She absorbs more than 5 strikes per minute, and although she's never been knocked out, she often gets caught clean when trying to press forward. She's also coming off a long layoff, more than 2 years away from the octagon due to ACL surgery, and while she trains out of Serra-Longo with killers like Matt Serra and Ray Longo, ring rust is a very real factor here. Stylistically, this fight comes down to whether Inao can keep it standing. She's got an excellent 85% takedown defense, but Amorim's entries are not traditional doubles. She chains them off clinch trips, body locks, and transitions that can catch even seasoned defenders. If Amorim can close the distance early, her submission threat is overwhelming. We've seen her wrap up armbars and rear naked chokes within seconds of gaining top control. Her reach advantage and stronger physicality could also play a role in setting up the clinch exchanges. Inao, on the other hand, will try to use angles, stay off the cage, and force Amorim to chase. But that kind of movement over 3 rounds could gas her if she's not in full fight rhythm after such a long layoff. So the prediction here is Jacqueline Amorim by submission. Her elite grappling, activity level, and physical strength should be enough to overcome Inao's volume striking. The risk, of course, is if she can't get those takedowns. If Inao can stuff the first few and keep Amorim at range, the Brazilian could start to fade. Her cardio in later rounds remains largely untested. But the most likely scenario is Amorim closing the distance, dragging this to the mat, and locking up another finish, solidifying herself as one of the division's top emerging threats. Azat Maxim comes into this fight as a composed, well-rounded flyweight who's quietly developing into one of the most disciplined grinders in the division. At 30 years old, standing 5'7" with a 70-inch reach, he's a tall, long southpaw who knows how to use his range and mix up levels. He's got a 15-2 record with 9 of those wins coming by finish, and both of his losses have been decisions. He's never been stopped. Maxim averages about 3 significant strikes landed per minute, but what really defines him is his grappling flow. He attempts over 2 takedowns per 15 minutes and holds an 85% takedown defense, meaning he can dictate where the fight takes place. He trains out of Elevation Fight Team in Denver, working with a mix of altitude conditioning and technical refinement from his base in Kazakhstan, and that shows in his pace and composure. He's durable, rarely hurt, and has shown consistent cardio through 3-round fights. Even when he's down early, Maxim tends to build as the fight goes on, pushing a steady pace, wearing opponents down with pressure, and finding dominant positions late. Across from him, Mitch Raposo is a talented and athletic prospect. He's fast, explosive, and has a dangerous mix of striking and wrestling. But he's giving up 2 inches in height and around 6 inches in reach here, and that's a key factor. Maxim's southpaw jab and straight left could force Raposo to take big steps into range, and that's where Azat's level changes become lethal. Raposo's takedown defense sits around 50%, and against someone who chains attempts like Maxim, that number could get tested fast. I think Maxim's path to victory is clear. Stay long, set up the takedown behind the left hand, and once he's on top, smother Raposo with control and pressure until the finish or a dominant decision. His calmness under pressure, high fight IQ, and ability to dictate pace should make the difference here. That said, Maxim's biggest risk is his defense. He absorbs about 5 significant strikes per minute, and if he gets lazy with his head movement, Raposo's speed and explosiveness could make things interesting early. But over 3 rounds, I see Maxim's patience, size, and grappling control wearing Raposo down. Maxim is the more polished, composed fighter with the deeper skill set. If he keeps his defense tight and avoids a fast start from Raposo, he should pull away late. I'll take Azat Maxim to win via decision. Hamdi Abdelwahab is a 32-year-old Egyptian heavyweight standing 6'2" with a 73-inch reach and an Olympic-level Greco-Roman wrestling pedigree. He's 6-1 professionally with 5 knockouts, and what stands out most is how he blends raw strength with control. When Hamdi gets on top, very few heavyweights can move him. He's accurate with his striking, landing nearly 50% of his shots, and averages around 2 takedowns per 15 minutes at a solid 67% success rate. Simply put, Hamdi's game revolves around pressure, pace, and positional dominance. He's still young in MMA terms, but he's got serious upside. His cardio holds up well through 3 rounds, and he's proven incredibly durable, never been knocked out, never been stopped. The biggest question for him is experience. Barnett is by far the most seasoned fighter he's faced in terms of total bouts and finishing ability. Chris Barnett brings a ton of danger early, 23 wins, 18 knockouts, and enough unpredictability to make anyone hesitate. He throws spinning kicks, flying attacks, and wild combinations from weird angles. If Hamdi gets reckless trying to close distance, he could easily eat something big and get caught. That's the main risk for him. Barnett only needs one moment. But over time, this fight favors the younger, bigger, fresher man. If Hamdi stays disciplined, pressures forward behind his jab, and works into the clinch, his Greco-Roman background should allow him to dictate where the fight takes place. The longer it goes, the more it tilts toward Abdelwahab. His path to victory is simple. Survive the early chaos, secure takedowns, wear Barnett down, and finish with ground control or late ground and pound. If he avoids the early bomb, Hamdi Abdelwahab should be able to grind this one out. His youth, size, and wrestling advantage make him the more consistent fighter over 3 rounds, and this could be the breakout win that finally establishes him as a real heavyweight contender. Hamdi Abdelwahab by decision. Jose Delgado comes into this fight looking like one of the most dangerous young finishers in the featherweight division. At just 27 years old, the MMA lab product has already built a 10-1 record with a perfect 100% finishing rate, 6 by knockout and 4 by submission. Standing 5'11" with a 73-inch reach, Delgado will have a notable size and range advantage over Nathaniel Wood, and that's a key part of what makes him so dangerous. His numbers back up his violence, landing over 7 significant strikes per minute with nearly 50% accuracy while absorbing half that rate. He overwhelms opponents with pressure, speed, and power. He also mixes in well-timed takedowns, averaging nearly 5 per 15 minutes at 60% accuracy, showing that he's not just a wild striker. He's an all-around finisher who can end fights anywhere. Delgado's biggest weapon here is momentum. He's riding a 7-fight win streak, coming off a 26-second knockout in June, and training under elite coaches at MMA Lab with the likes of Benson Henderson and John Crouch. Against Wood, he'll be the faster, more explosive fighter, and if he can keep the fight at mid-range or force chaotic exchanges early, his power and athleticism could simply be too much. His path to victory is clear. Use that reach, control distance, and unleash high-volume combinations mixed with level changes to break Wood's rhythm before he can settle into his technical game. However, the big question with Delgado is his gas tank. Most of his fights end early, so we haven't really seen him pushed into deep waters. Wood is a veteran who thrives in long, grinding fights, so if Delgado can't get the finish inside the first 2 rounds, his pace could fade. He's also traveling from Arizona to Abu Dhabi. That 11-hour time difference and the early prelim slot could test his timing and energy. But if he keeps his composure and maintains that first-round pressure, his explosiveness and finishing instinct could make this a breakout performance. Simply put, if Delgado finds his rhythm early, he's the kind of fighter who can turn a technical battle into chaos, and in chaos, Jose Delgado usually wins. Delgado by KO TKO. Walter Walker comes in as a 27-year-old, 6'6" Brazilian heavyweight with an impressive 14-1 record and a 78-inch reach. He's a long, grappling-oriented fighter who thrives in chaos, chaining takedowns into leg entanglements and finishing with slick heel hooks. His recent performances show exactly that. 3 straight submission wins, all via leg locks, built from smart level changes and tight control. Statistically, he's not a volume striker, landing about 1.9 significant strikes per minute. But when he gets his hands on you, he averages nearly 5 takedown attempts per round with 70% accuracy. Once the fight hits the mat, his control time averages around 5 minutes, and that's where he's lethal. Now he's taking on Louis Sutherland, a dangerous knockout artist from Scotland who's 6'3", fights around 260 pounds, and holds a record of 10-3 with 7 first-round KOs. Sutherland's power is very real. He lands over 4 significant strikes per minute and looks to explode forward with looping hooks and clinch knees. But that aggression often leaves him open to level changes, and he's been taken down multiple times even by regional-level grapplers. His 53% takedown defense and 0 submission game are major red flags here. If Walker stays composed and avoids the early bomb, this fight is tailor-made for him. He can use his reach to draw Sutherland's entries, shoot under those wild punches, and drag the fight into his world. Once it's there, he's got every tool to finish: heel hooks, back takes, control. The risk for Walker is the same as always. If he can't get this down early, his striking output and defensive reactions in open exchanges could get him clipped. But stylistically, this matchup feels like a trap for Sutherland, and I'm leaning towards Walker by first-round submission. Alright, this matchup between Abdul Karim Al-Selwady and Matthias Camilo is a really interesting stylistic clash. High-paced, explosive offense versus experience and composure. Starting with Al-Selwady, he's a well-rounded, durable fighter out of Fortis MMA with strong wrestling fundamentals and smart pressure. In his recent fight against Loic Radzhabov, he had some solid moments early. You can see on tape that he uses the jab well to establish range, but the big issue in that fight was how Radzhabov timed his counters when Al-Selwady dropped his rear hand on the reset. If you slow that down, it's clear, a half-second gap, and Radzhabov capitalized. Still, what that fight showed is that Al-Selwady can hang with strong, physical lightweights. His entries into the clinch are deliberate, his takedowns come off level changes from the jab, and when he gets top position, he's patient and heavy. The cardio's there, too. He doesn't fade, even when he's pressured. He's fought a higher level of opposition overall, and that experience matters against a newcomer like Camilo. Camilo, on the other hand, is dangerous early. In his UFC debut against Gane, he came out firing crisp 1-2s, mixing levels, showing real speed and athleticism. But when you watch the tape, especially that opening scramble, you see a lack of composure on the ground. Gane reversed him, elevated, and turned a triangle attempt into a nasty face crank finish. Camilo's offense is explosive, but his defensive grappling still needs polish. So here's how I see it. Al-Selwadi's path to victory is all about staying disciplined behind his jab, pushing Camilo backward and making this an attritional fight. He needs to force the clinch, drag it into the second and third round, and test Camilo's defensive awareness on the mat. The danger: Al-Selwadi can get hit clean when he resets. Camilo's fast, and if he times a counter or catches him off balance early, he's got the power to make it a quick night. But over 15 minutes, I think Al-Selwadi's durability, composure, and control win out. My final prediction is Abdul Karim Al-Selwadi by unanimous decision, grinding pace, steady pressure, and veteran savvy getting it done. Now let's look at Ludovic Klein. Klein is 30 years old, listed at 5'7", but with a significant 72.5-inch reach. His pro record sits at 23 wins, 5 losses, and 1 draw. Standing opposite him is Mateusz Rebecki, 20-3, 5'7" with a 66-inch reach. If you check Klein's tape, you'll notice he's not the highest volume fighter, but he fires with purpose. One moment that stuck out: Klein versus Thiago Moises. He feints the jab, steps offline, and lands a crisp overhand before resetting. That kind of timing is rare. In another clip against Roosevelt Roberts, you see his leg kicks break the base. He angles out, then picks the head when you shift your weight. It's surgical. Here, why I'm backing Klein. Rebecki wants to turn this into a pressure fight, but Klein's reach and counter timing give him 2 huge advantages. If Klein uses feints early, lands that lead overhand or a straight while Rebecki resets, he can change the momentum. He can force Rebecki into hesitant moments or second-guessing his pressure. Klein also shows fewer defensive lapses standing than many pressure fighters, which means if he avoids clinch scrambles, he's got a clear path. If Rebecki smells blood, comes out ultra-fast, smothers Klein with volume, drags him into clinches and ground exchanges, it could become a slightly rough fight for Klein's timing-first style. Also, Klein has shown vulnerability when he's forced into sustained pressure or taken into scrambles. That's Rebecki's sweet zone. So my final call: I'm picking Ludovic Klein by unanimous decision. He uses range and timing to control the stand-up and avoids the full-pace bomb bursts of Rebecki. Let's jump into one of the most intriguing middleweight fights of the night: Ikram Aliskerov versus Junyong Park. First up, the basics. Aliskerov is a 32-year-old southpaw listed at about 6 feet tall, with a reported 76-inch reach. He carries a pro record of 16-2, and in the UFC he's 3-1 so far, wins over Phil Hawes, Warley Alves, and Andre Muniz, and a loss to Robert Whittaker. On the flip side, Park is 34 years old, around 5'10" with a 73-inch reach, also a middleweight, and holds a record of 19-6 with 9-3 in the UFC. Alright, now the tape. If you go back to Aliskerov's KO of Phil Hawes, you'll see this. Jab, step offline, the rear hand torque through the hips, freeze the half beat as Hawes retreats, and it ends. That kind of timing is rare. Then his TKO of Warley Alves. Watch the flying knee following a level change feint. He mixes grappling cues with striking to trap his opponent. Conversely, in his loss to Whittaker, you can see the exact danger. He walks square into an overhand uppercut where his guard drops and the counter lands clean. That clip is the caution tape. Aliskerov has the tools to dictate where this fight happens. If he closes the distance early, keeps it short range, uses the feints and explosive entries we saw on his highlight reels, I believe he can overwhelm Park. Park's pressure and leg kick chains are solid, but he hasn't consistently punished that style of elite timing and power in short range like Aliskerov has. The path to a finish is very real. Park wins if he avoids the short-range trap, uses his jab, circles out of Aliskarov's power window, and turns Aliskarov's aggression against him. If Aliskarov walks into a clean overhand or gets dragged into a grind where his punch volumes drop, that time-tested Park blueprint works. Also, if Aliskarov doesn't land early and the fight becomes a slower technical affair, Park's experience could tilt the rounds. I'm picking Ikram Aliskarov by second-round TKO. I believe his timing and explosion are just a degree above in this matchup. But keep your eye on those counters. One clean shot from Park and the narrative flips. Nasrat Haqparast is a 29-year-old lightweight standing 5'10" with a 72-inch reach, fighting out of Tristar Gym in Montreal under Firas Zahabi. He carries a professional record of 17-5, with a 10-4 UFC record. Across his last 3 outings, against Jamie Mullarkey, Jared Gordon, and Esteban Ribovics, the footage paints a clear evolution. Against Mullarkey, he used the low kick into straight right pattern to perfection, starching him in under a round. Versus Gordon, he showed maturity. Instead of chasing a finish, he mixed in clinch control and short hooks to edge rounds cleanly. And in the Ribovics war, you could see his composure under fire, absorbing volume early but adapting mid-fight to dictate the pace. Haqparast lands around 4.2 significant strikes per minute at roughly 45% accuracy, absorbing fewer than he throws, with strong defense near 64%. His base is boxing and low-kick setups, built around footwork and head movement rather than pure volume. What stands out on film is how well he resets after being pressured. He doesn't panic or overswing. He reestablishes range and comes back sharper. That composure is something Salkeld hasn't yet had to display across deep UFC minutes. Across the cage, Quillan Salkeld, 27 years old, stands at 6 feet with a 75-inch reach. He's a fast-rising Australian lightweight with a record of 9-1, currently 2-0 in the UFC, known for his explosive striking. He made waves with that 19-second knockout of Anshul Jubli in his debut, a clean feint to right-hand counter, and followed it up with a composed decision over Yanal Ashmus. Salkeld lands crisp, accurate power shots, but the footage also shows that when his timing window's close, his output dips. In the Ashmus fight, once he couldn't find early finishes, he spent stretches circling with limited volume and gave up cage control. That's where Haqparast's experience edge matters. He's been in with seasoned UFC talent, has more cage time at this level, and can sustain a consistent pace past round 1. If Haqparast manages distance, avoids overcommitting on entries, and drags Salkeld into a measured striking fight, his accuracy and composure should carry him to a decision or late TKO. However, the danger is real. Salkeld's early explosion is no joke. If Nasrat gets caught stepping straight in, the Australian's counter right could end it instantly. But assuming he survives the early storm, the footage favors Haqparast's poise, cardio, and mid-fight adjustments to take control as the minutes build. Nasrat Haqparast via unanimous decision. Aleksandar Rakic is a 33-year-old light heavyweight, standing 6'4" with a 78-inch reach, one of the longest in the division. He's 14-5 overall and 6-4 inside the UFC, with 9 of those wins coming by knockout. Across the cage is Azamat Murzakanov, 36 years old, a compact 5'10" southpaw with a 71-inch reach, holding a perfect 15-0 record and 5-0 in the UFC, 11 of those wins by knockout. When you study the tape, Rakic's strengths are obvious. He uses that long frame beautifully, steady jab, hard leg kicks, and a piston of a right hand that keeps opponents on the outside. In his fights with Thiago Santos and Anthony Smith, he dictated range with surgical precision, landing clean straights while chopping the legs early. His defensive awareness is elite head movement, high guard, and disciplined footwork to exit on angles instead of brawling. Even in the losses to Prochaska and Ankaleev, he held his own technically. He just faced the division's very best. His biggest asset here is range management. Murzakanov thrives in close quarters, those short, explosive bursts where he lands his devastating overhands. But against someone with Rakic's 7-inch reach advantage, closing that gap won't be easy. Rakic's jab leg kick rhythm can completely stall Murzacanov's pressure if he maintains distance and doesn't get greedy with counters. Statistically, Rakic lands around 4.1 significant strikes per minute at 50% accuracy, while absorbing less than 3. His cardio has proven reliable in 15-minute bouts, and his composure in later rounds gives him an edge against Murzakanov, who rarely goes past round 2. But there's always risk. If Rakic lingers in the pocket or gets caught resetting mid-combination, the same pattern Prochaska exploited, Murzacanov's short left hook or overhand right could end the night instantly. Rakic must stay disciplined. Jab, kick, reset. If he does that, his technique, reach, and late-round conditioning should secure a decision or even a late TKO. My prediction is Rakic by decision. A measured, technical performance built on range control and experience at the top level. Volkov is a 36-year-old heavyweight standing 6'7" with an 80-inch reach, fighting around 250–255 pounds. He enters this bout with a 38-11 pro record. On the other side, we have Jailton Almeida, age 34, listed at 6'3" with a 79-inch reach. His pro record is 22-3, and his UFC record is climbing, currently undefeated in his last 2 and considered a rising contender. When you dive into the tape, for Volkov you'll see a few standout patterns. His long frame allows him to dominate the jab-straight combo. He jabs, teeps, fires a straight right, keeps opponents at bay. In fights like his one against Ciryl Gane, you can slow it down and see the shot sequence. Body kick to straight right as Gane stepped in. It's textbook range control. He also has finishing tools. Remember the Ezekiel choke finish on Tai Tuivasa, so he isn't one-dimensional. His durability is solid, his cardio proven over 15-minute fights, and his ring IQ is veteran level. Here, why I believe Volkov wins. His frame gives him the space advantage. Almeida will have to close that distance and defeat those jabs leg kicks. If Volkov sticks to the outside, uses his kicks to slow Almeida's forward pressure, lands clean straights and avoids being dragged into heavy grappling scrambles, he controls the fight following his pattern. That path leads to decision victory or possibly late TKO from accumulation. That said, there's the flip side. Almeida is dangerous. If Volkov lets his guard drop, allows Almeida to smother his jab, drives him to the fence and drags him into the clinch takedown, Almeida's grappling and ground control could dominate. Volkov can lose if he fails to keep the fight postured at range or eats a short knockout shot early. In short, I'm picking Alexander Volkov by KO/TKO. He sticks to his strengths, avoids the danger zone, and picks his spots. But I'm also watching closely for that grappling risk if Volkov doesn't execute his range game properly. Umar Nurmagomedov is a 29-year-old bantamweight standing 5'8" with a 69-inch reach. He carries a professional record of 18-1, including 6-1 inside the UFC. Across those wins, he's finished 7 by submission, 2 by knockout, and earned 9 decisions. Mario Bautista, his opponent, is 32 years old, 5'9" with a 69-inch reach as well. He's 16-2 overall and 10-2 in the UFC, boasting 3 knockouts and 6 submissions. Both are highly technical bantamweights, but stylistically, this is a clash between elite control and opportunistic chaos. When you watch Umar on film, you immediately notice his calm, composed tempo. His footwork is measured, his feints are layered, and his defense rarely breaks down. Against Corey Sandhagen, Umar's precision stood out, landing clean counters, controlling distance, and slipping out of danger with small pivots. Even when he suffered a broken hand against Merab Dvalishvili, he still managed to defend takedowns and land sharp kicks from range. That fight proved not only his technical ability, but also his composure and toughness under adversity. In earlier footage, like his knockout of Rayani Barcelos, Ymer's setups are surgical. He disguises his body kick with level changes, then closes distance instantly with straight counters. His striking isn't about volume, it's about efficiency. He lands 4.8 significant strikes per minute at nearly 60% accuracy, while absorbing under 2 per minute. Combine that with nearly 2.7 takedowns per 15 minutes at 45% accuracy, and you've got a fighter who controls every phase. Mario Bautista is dangerous in scrambles. Watching his fights with Benito Lopez and Guido Canetti, you see how quickly he transitions from strikes to submissions, especially that suplex to rear naked choke finish against Canetti. He throws in combination, keeps pressure high, and finishes when the opponent slips. His biggest weapon is his ability to create chaos and capitalize when the fight becomes unpredictable. But that's exactly the kind of fight Ymer rarely allows. His defensive awareness and range management make it extremely difficult to pull him into those brawls or scrambling exchanges. If Bautista can't make it messy early, Ymer's control, timing, and discipline should gradually take over. If Ymer wins, it'll likely be through smart pressure, clean counters, and positional dominance. A unanimous decision or late submission once Bautista's takedown defense fades. However, Ymer's one risk is that he sometimes relies on control over damage. If Bautista can stuff a few early takedowns and force Ymer into prolonged exchanges, that unpredictability could test Ymer's packing and force mistakes. But as the film shows, Ymer rarely cracks under that pressure. My final prediction is Ymer Nurmagomedov by unanimous decision. He controls the distance, neutralizes Bautista's scrambles, and shows again why he's one of the most complete talents in the division who I think is the only answer for Merab. Mackenzie Dern is a 32-year-old strawweight standing 5'4" with a 63-inch reach and a professional record of 15 wins and 5 losses, 8 by submission, 0 by knockout, and 7 by decision. In the UFC, she's gone 10-5, competing at the highest level for years. Across the cage is Verna Jandiroba, 37 years old, standing 5'3" with a 64-inch reach, and a record of 22 wins and 3 losses, including 14 submissions, 1 knockout, and 7 decision wins. She's 8-3 in the UFC, recently coming off strong performances against Yan Xiaonan and Amanda Lemos. When you look at the footage, you can see clear evolution in both fighters' games. In Dern's recent rematch against Amanda Ribas, she showcased much improved striking steady pressure with leg kicks, feints, and sharper boxing. But it was the way she transitioned from striking to grappling that stood out. Late in round 3, she perfectly timed a level change, floated into mount, and locked in a tight armbar with under 10 seconds left, textbook Dern Jiu-Jitsu. Her top control and submission chaining were reminiscent of her early black belt days, but now polished by years of UFC-level experience. Comparing that to Jandiroba's fight with Amanda Lemos, you see a more methodical grappler. She works for clinch entries, drags opponents down along the fence, and hunts submissions in sequence, kimura to armbar, to positional control. Against Yan Xiaonan, she even pulled off a slick armbar setup from half guard, forcing Yan into full defense for much of the round. However, her striking is still a clear secondary tool. She uses it to close distance rather than to do damage. This matchup is high-level grappler versus grappler, but Dern's striking improvements and smoother transitions give her a slight edge. She's more explosive with her takedowns and can create scrambles even from defensive positions. Where Jandiroba needs to slowly build control, Dern only needs one opening to finish. She's the more dynamic submission threat and has shown real strides in her stand-up. If she can dictate the pace early and create chaos in the grappling exchanges. If Jandiroba can grind her down, maintain top position, and turn this into a slow, control-based fight, Dern could be stuck underneath where her jiu-jitsu is less dangerous. Jandiroba's positional awareness is elite, and if she gets early momentum, she can frustrate Dern's tempo. But ultimately, based on the footage, Dern's speed, athleticism, and fluid submission game make her the more dangerous fighter in scrambles. I'm going with Mackenzie Dern by decision. Tom Aspinall stands 6'5" and comes into this bout with a professional record of 15-3 and has built a reputation for explosive early finishes. Across his recent UFC outings, he's averaged near 8 significant strikes landed per minute, with around a 67% accuracy. Career stats show he drops heavy damage fast. On the opposite corner, Ciryl Gane is listed at 6'4" with an 81 reach, also heavyweight, and brings a professional record of 13-2 plus top-tier title-level experience. He's more measured in output, around 5.2 strikes landed per minute with 61% accuracy, and is known for elite footwork and technical striking, along with improved wrestling in recent fights. When you pull up the tape on Aspinall, what stands out is the first-round urgency. Take his win over Curtis Blades. Within about a minute he exploded with a huge right hand, then followed it with a clinch takedown and ground-and-pound combo to finish. That kind of blink-and-you're-done starter is very much his signature. Also, you'll spot sequences where he feints low leg kicks, steps in heavy, and unleashes a power shot almost on instinct. He doesn't waste time. The downside: if he misses that initial explosion, the film shows him sometimes overcommitting and getting picked off by more cautious, tough characters. His earlier knee injury also shows up in his return fights when the pace stretches late. He's not built just to grind it out for 5 rounds yet. For Gane, the footage reveals a different blueprint. He uses teeps, body kicks, switching stances, and lateral movement to control distance. Look at his fight versus Alexander Volkov. He mixed in wrestling when he needed to, but most of the time he looked comfortable managing space and picking his shots. That reach advantage and movement give him a platform to neutralize power. However, the film also shows that when opponents collapse the distance on him early and get inside his rhythm, he can be forced into mid-range firefights or wrestling scrambles that blunt his striking. Notably, his foot injury sustained in that fight might still influence his push-kick effectiveness, though he says he's fully recovered. Aspinall has the highest knockout threat in this fight. If he lands early, especially in round 1, he can end the night. His submission hunting adds a secondary layer of danger if things go to scrambles. The film backs up that once he gets inside, he converts hard and fast. If Gane avoids the early blast and uses his reach and movement to keep the fight at range, Aspinall's explosive bursts might not land clean, and he could be drawn into later rounds where Gane's slower grind and volume favor him. Also, if Aspinall's knee or movement isn't 100% on fight night, his entries could suffer. My pick is Tom Aspinall by submission. I believe he lands early and finishes before Gane can do anything. That's my full breakdown and prediction for UFC 321. If you enjoyed the analysis or learned something new, make sure to drop a like and subscribe. It really helps the channel grow. Let me know your picks down in the comments. I will read every one of them. Thanks for watching.